Over the next week, a long and arduous process of a complete weapons and armor refit for Titan took place. And let me tell you, there were some major modifications. Basically everything, right down to the construction of the initial framework that Titan was built on. We ended up having to extract Titan's hardware, her physical program, along with the engine, and basically scrap everything except the armor. A complete rebuild. I mean, I already had her made out of high-quality steel, but now we had an overwhelming supply of an exceptionally rare and almost unbreakable metal. And that wasn't going to go to waste. So we rebuilt it all, right down to the frame. Titan's program simply remained running to the side, still affixed to the engine, so she was never really deactivated. I asked her if she'd want to, if the process would make her uncomfortable, or something to that effect, but she assured me as long as she kept her ability to communicate and see and perceive the world around her, she was fine with it. She was actually interested in seeing the process of constructing her new upgraded body. The most taxing part of all of it was the dramatic redesign that would allow Titan's body to encompass the weapon systems that we came up with. And let me tell you, Danny went all out. After seeing the plans, well, I was completely blown away. He designed a weapons layout that completely fit me and would work to our advantage without drastically affecting Titan's maneuverability, aerodynamics, or overall weight. At first I was surprised when he said he wanted to maintain the industrial-sized nature of the primary chain that linked all of the wheels and the engine together. I mean, to be honest, I did it out of necessity, a lack of materials, and quite frankly I wondered why he would keep it. But then, he showed me the blueprints for the new weapon systems that he was installing into Titan's frame, and they were all impressive, extremely so, as well as including defensive measures, utilizing the best of the equipment that we had in order to produce the highest quality result. It was astonishing, in every sense of the word. He had made weapons both for Titan and for me, some of which were interchangeable between the two of us. The first set of weapons was a pair of extendable blades that would protrude from the side of Titan, exiting from the center of her body, right behind the first wheel, the wheel in the front, spreading out like wings, very long blade wings, the blades of which would of course function like a chainsaw, except a highly refined one, made out of an exceptionally rare and almost unbreakable metal, meaning that I could drive by enemy vehicles in close proximity, extend the blades, and simply saw through the side of them, cutting through wheels and things like that in a flash, darting by in a swerve to make slashes at enemies. They were exceptionally useful, at least ideal, for utilizing Titan's maneuverability and overall speed. He also made a double set of chainsaw swords, once again custom fitted for me. These two would be retracted, stuck inside of Titan, and I could simply remove them whenever I wanted. They would simply pop open out of a latch, and I would pull them free of Titan's form and slash away at whatever I wanted. Each one running on a battery pack So of course there was a limited amount of usage before the battery ran out of juice. But with the amount of power that the battery held, it would be more than enough time. After all, I wasn't going to be using these things for hours at a time. Quick bursts of destruction is all I really needed out of it. But Danny assured me that even if I ran the chainsaw function constantly, they'd last up to a half an hour before draining completely. The design was very efficient, and based on the drawings, looked really cool. Next on the list is actually sort of a cross between offensive ability and defensive ability. I never would have thought of it myself, but Danny found a way to merge the two, turning an offensive weapon into an implement which could continue to be an offensive weapon while dramatically increasing defense, especially for me. I mean, Titan was made of a almost unbreakable metal, or at least she would be, shortly. Adding the XPC armor on top of that, it was highly unlikely that anything would pack enough juice to really damage her. The soft spot was me, but Danny found a double fix for that. Danny took the pulse cannon from the initial XPC, which was essentially a high-yield weapon that generated a high-impact field of energy, so to speak. It would create a highly condensed field of energy, and then fire that highly condensed field of energy. And so, in essence, it was like being shot with a cannon, except the cannonball was made out of force fields, something like that. I mean, the energy was of course not a solid object, so it would start to spread out the further it got away from the initial point where it was fired. But in close range, you do not want to be hit by it. Danny took that piece of weaponry and amplified and modified its function somewhat. He created what amounted to a shield, a small buckler shield design that would attach and detach from the front of Titan's frame, right around where the steering was. I could just place it in between the handlebars, and it would be a part of Titan. And whenever I needed it, just grab it and pull it out, just like the swords. Here's the double function part. While I'm holding it, I can still activate the pulse cannon part to create a highly focused field of energy that shoots out like a cannonball, smashing anything nearby into little pieces. And it could even function like that as it was equipped to Titan, which was why it got the center placement in front of the handlebars. I could simply fire out a jolt in front of me in order to crush, push away, or just destroy things directly in front of me within a short range. And it packs one heck of a wallop. And now for the defensive part of it. Danny managed to arrange it so that he could use the pulse cannon as a primary emitter instead of firing off an intense field of energy. It would produce that field of energy, and then, through relays on Titan, allow that condensed field of energy to form somewhat of a barrier around it, which could be utilized while I was on Titan. Or, if I extracted the shield, it would form somewhat of a barrier in front of me, an actual shield, a force field, repelling attacks, at least up to a certain degree. Strong enough weaponry could still break through it, but it would stop most arms fire. Only the heaviest of weapons fire could possibly break through it, at least until the charge gave out. But once again, as long as it was Lodged inside of Titan, it would just recharge, and projecting the field that protected me while I was on Titan didn't really affect the charge rate at all, as impressive as that is. Danny also built a custom suit of sorts, some high-quality racing gear, with metal plates for protection, made from the same steel that Titan's new body was going to be made out of. Then there were another little idea Danny had. Danny created a basic design for an autonomous weapon, one that I could have multiple of. Basically, it was a tiny little robot. Each one was condensed within a small sphere, something about the size of a baseball. Inside were some basic electronics that would allow it to receive signals, as well as a powerful magnet that would allow it to attach itself to metal, like the kind heavily armored vehicles tend to be made out of. There was no need for a program to run them, because they would be hooked to Titan systems. Basically, Titan, or me, could simply remotely control these tiny little robots from any distance we so choose, within reason. The range for controlling them was about a quarter mile, which was more than enough. And at the core of each and every one, a special type of high-grade explosive, one of Danny's specialties, a type of explosive that he learned to make, and was one of the only people in the Yellow District who knew how to. A high-grade explosive that they came up with during the Great War, highly condensed, highly stable, and an extraordinary explosive force wield for the small amount that's required to produce it. Basically, the amount that goes into a tiny ball of it, about the size of a green pea. You know, those small peas, little round green things. Some people mix them into their mashed potatoes. Well, an amount of this explosive, about the size of a green pea, would generate an explosion big enough to take out your average vehicle with no trouble at all. But far and away, the most impressive design that Danny came up with was one just labeled the Rocket Sword. This was completely insane and absolutely awesome. Honestly, out of everything that he made up, this was the one that I was most looking forward to testing out.